The talks between U.S. and Iranian negotiators are reportedly set to continue through tonight after being stalled over President Trump's threat of fresh attacks.
The sticking point remains Israel's weekend strikes in Lebanon, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu refusing to withdraw the IDF from the southern part of the country.
We established a security zone in Gaza. We established a security zone in Syria. We established a security zone in Lebanon, and we shall keep it as long as is necessary to protect our people.
Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem said that he will not accept any ceasefire deal that allows Israel the freedom to operate in Lebanon or to station troops there. He said Hezbollah will respect a truce if one is agreed upon.
Well, Sean Yom is Associate Professor of Political Science at Temple University and Senior Fellow in the Democracy in the Arab World Now. Professor Yom, good to see you this morning. Lebanon, remains a huge sticking point, as we just heard. But why exactly is Hezbollah so crucial to Iran? I mean, what roles does the group play that Tehran cannot do on its own, cannot carry out on its own, even with that potentially $350 to $400 million injection, if you like, as spelled out in the MOU?
So Hezbollah, before the Iran war, played a critical role as part of the Iranian regime's so-called axis of resistance across the Middle East. And by that, what we mean geopolitically is the umbrella of proxy groups and non-state actors such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Palestine, or the Houthi movement of Yemen that advanced Iran's geopolitical goals and military interests across the region well outside the boundaries of the country. Now, since the October 2023 Hamas attacks in Israel and the subsequent Gaza war, another key Iranian proxy in the Assad regime of Syria has fallen. The Houthi movement of Yemen has likewise fallen on hard times. So this leaves Hezbollah. Hezbollah remains a critical proxy group and non-state actor that represents Iranian state interests across the Middle East. It is not only an Iranian proxy group, it is an indigenous Lebanese force that also plays a critical role in Lebanese society and Lebanese politics. But nonetheless, it does receive considerable support from the Iranian government. The Israeli government's position, therefore, is that so long as Hezbollah acts in an aggressive manner towards the state of Israel, Israel, in its right to self-defense, has the subsequent right to invade and occupy parts of southern Lebanon for the ostensible goal of eliminating Hezbollah.
Professor, we know that the talks are going to continue through the night, but we heard President Trump escalating the rhetoric against Iran, even as Mr. Vance pursues negotiations. What are the strategy behind this sort of mixed messages, and could it help or hurt the diplomatic effort?
Yes, so that's a great question. I think some context is in order for some of your listeners and viewers, because the way that Hezbollah plays into a very complicated set of negotiations is one that is not readily apparent, I think, to someone just glossing over the region. So let's go back to the MOU signed on June 17th, which ended or at least paused nearly 4 months of war. So as we recall, the Memorandum of Understanding, or the MOU, is not a comprehensive peace treaty. It's just a fragile 60-day pause designed to avert a global economic catastrophe. One of the reasons why the United States and the Trump administration sought the MOU was to avert a severe geopolitical crisis given Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz and rising domestic pressure in American society at home against the war. Now, because of the hasty nature of the MOU, the U.S. conceded to Iran considerable leverage so long as the Hormuz Strait remained open for energy shipping and commercial traffic. The U.S. would, among other concessions, end its naval blockade of Iran, give waivers for Iran to sell its crude oil freely, and it would give the Iranian government access to billions of dollars in frozen assets. Other issues, such as the fate of Iran's nuclear program and its ballistic missile program, were untouched by the MOU, so long as the Iranian government also agreed to surrender its pursuit of a nuclear weapon. Now, critically, the MOU said nothing about Iran's support for proxy movements like Hezbollah in Lebanon. The MOU required, however, conflict to be terminated not only in the Gulf, but also in Lebanon. The problem is that the MOU was signed between the US and the Iranian government. Israel was not a party to the MOU. So you have a lot of moving parts in a complicated interim peace agreement that, to boot, is being constantly ratcheted and amplified by belligerent rhetoric from, unfortunately, the Trump administration in the US and at times, frankly, the Iranian government as well. And that was the context in which Iran walked out of the negotiations less than a day ago. It was because President Trump issued a new round of groundless threats against Iran, as well as Israel refusing to halt its occupation of southern Lebanon with the calculation that from the Iranian side that the U.S. would pressure Israel to indeed pull out of Lebanon because, frankly, the U.S. has less patience for a closure of the Hormuz Strait than Iran has and its capabilities to withstand another few months of war.
Let's talk a bit more about Israel right now. It's made no secret of its opposition to any deal that leaves Iran intact as a regional power.
Yes.
92% of Israelis believe Iran won the war, and nearly half support renewed military action against Hezbollah, even at the risk of clashing with Donald Trump. So how real is the danger of Netanyahu moving to derail these negotiations before they conclude?
The danger is real, and it is imminent. So again, recall that Israel was not a party to the MOU. Israel did not want the Trump administration to sign that interim peace agreement that paused the nearly 4-month-old conflict with Iran. Because recall that at the start of hostility at the end of this February, or the end of February this year, one of the goals endorsed by the Netanyahu government was regime change in Tehran. And if not that, then at least the complete annihilation of Iran's military capabilities, as well as its nuclear infrastructure, including not just its pursuit of nuclear weapons, but its civilian nuclear industry. Most of those goals are off the table because of the MOU. The MOU effectively concedes that the Iranian regime is not going to be overthrown. It allows for Iran to keep its ballistic missile program. The only major concession regarding its military capabilities are its surrender of its pursuit of a nuclear weapon while leaving the rest of its nuclear infrastructure intact. So in that regard, from the Israeli perspective, if ongoing war in Lebanon is enough to derail the peace agreement and make Iran walk away from the 60-day interim negotiations and therefore resume full-scale war, that is a viable incentive for the Netanyahu government, even though such a move would be catastrophic to the global economy. So the incentive is there, and the peril and the dangers are both there as well.
So with that real risk in mind, Professor, then what would be the most likely sequence of events if these talks fail?
If the talks fail, then war will resume, likely in some, perhaps not in full-scale fashion, as we saw between, say, February 28th or the first week of March, but there will be ongoing missile strikes, drone attacks, and tit-for-tat attacks between the U.S. military and Iran, as we saw through the first half of March. Now, more importantly, beyond the military chessboard, the Hormuz Strait will be effectively closed once more. And that is going to be, I think, quite catastrophic to the global economy, to global energy markets, as well as global commercial shipping traffic in certain commodity sectors as well, such as petrochemicals and fertilizers. That's going to be the immediate impact. I don't think we're going to get there, though, because the Trump administration is under immense domestic pressure to get energy prices under control and to reduce inflationary pressures on the home front, particularly with midterm elections in U.S. politics coming up this November. And that's why I think the Iranian calculation to walk away from the talks just a day ago in disgust, given Donald Trump's endless threats against future strikes against Iran and Israel's occupation of southern Lebanon, is quite tactful. The reason why that calculation, I think, is more likely to succeed than fail is that the Iranian regime understands that President Trump, given both immense global pressure and domestic political pressure, again, given the impending midterm elections in November and rising inflation and consumer costs at home, will likely cave in and put, in turn, subsequent pressure on Israel to dampen down the intensity of its conflict in Lebanon, and perhaps even give further concessions to Iran as the 60-day period of negotiations proceeds until its conclusion in early to mid-August.
All right, Professor Yom, we do have to wrap it up here. Appreciate you talking to us this morning. Sean Yom is Associate Professor of Political Science at Temple University. He's also a Senior Fellow at Democracy in the Arab World Now.